Just get that going. Okay, perfect. So we today are going to talk about recipe modifications, just in time for the holidays. And I apologize for anyone who is joining us for the first time. My name is April Razzo, and I am one of the registered dietitians with Florida Cancer Specialists. Um, we're going to hold for just a second. I apologize. Um, I just saw a message that somebody raised their hand with a question, and I'm not sure how to address the hand raise. I'm learning too, guys. So I will take this opportunity to say that if anyone has a question, can you put it in the Q&A box? I know there's a chat option and there's a Q&A option. Oh, not able to mute yourself. Okay. There should be a microphone, a picture of a microphone where you can mute or unmute yourself. And that's, if you're not able to do that for some reason, then hopefully your environment is very quiet, would be what I would say to that. But if at all possible, please use that microphone display to mute yourself. Perfect. I think we all are muted. So that being said, there is a Q&A box versus the chat box. I've got the Q&A open, so I'm kind of keeping an eye on it in case anyone asks any questions. And we're going to go ahead and dive in and get started with recipe modifications. Let me make sure I've got this on. Perfect. So I've done this topic before, talking about the holidays and recipes, and I focused on the meal, the holiday meal, and how to modify those recipes and lighten up that meal, how to make good choices. But I think it's important to remember that holiday overeating doesn't happen in one day, in one meal. You don't undo 10 or 12 months of healthy with one meal. So the bigger issue is the holiday season, from Halloween through New Year's, basically. And that weight gain for a lot of people can be anywhere from 1 to 10 pounds. 10 pounds sounds like a lot. Don't panic. The average weight gain for the holiday season is not 10 pounds. The average is more like 1 to 3 pounds. But some people do see more than that. And then the issue becomes that it can take us up to 5 months to lose that excess weight if we lose it. Sometimes we don't, and 1 or 2 pounds doesn't seem like a lot, but if we never lose it and we just keep gaining that weight every year, now we're talking about less healthy. And it's not all about weight. It's about how do we make healthy choices the whole year, the whole season, and maybe we acknowledge that we're going to indulge in that one meal on that one day, right? So let's get started with just some general modifications. We are going to talk about different recipes for the big holiday meal, but we're also going to talk about things you can do to lighten up recipes the whole season, the whole year, so that we don't overindulge for an extended period of time. So the first thing that we can do is possibly use unsaturated oils like canola oil or olive oil in place of butter or margarine or shortening, in order to, it's not necessarily lessening the calories, but it is switching from a lot of unhealthy saturated fat to a heart healthier unsaturated fat. We can also substitute half of the fat or butter in a recipe with some unsweetened applesauce or mashed potatoes, or even low-fat yogurt. And we're going to look at an example of that in just a minute. You can often cut the amount of sugar in a recipe in half, not substituting it with anything, just cut it in half. It will still taste sweet. You will not miss it. I've done it in one of the recipes we're going to look at, and my recipe still turned out amazing. Okay. Um, Lean cuts of meat versus fatty cuts. So I've talked about this before when you're looking at steaks and all that white marbling that goes through the cuts of meat. That's fat. That's saturated, unhealthy fat. And yes, it's juicy when it's cooked, but ideally, if you can choose cuts that have less of that white, less of that fat, or when you're using chicken or turkey, take the skins off, trim the excess fat before you cook it. When you're choosing ground meat or ground turkey, look for those leaner packages, the 90% or higher lean compared to the 10% or less fat. And that way you're really cutting down on the fat and making it a healthier option. For people who need to watch their salt intake, I've talked before, especially during our disaster preparedness, about the convenience of canned goods. It's okay to use broth, canned soups, canned vegetables, but choose the low sodium or the no added salt instead, so that we're really cutting back. You don't need as much salt as is typically in those products, okay? So those are much better options for you. Um, Also, I do this all the time. Substitute plain non-fat Greek yogurt instead of sour cream. They basically taste the same. And at least with your yogurt, the Greek yogurt, you're getting the added benefit of some protein and some calcium along with that flavor. Instead of frosting on a cake or on brownies or something like that, maybe try some pureed fruit or a fruit sauce or a little dusting of powdered sugar to really cut back on the calories and the sugar and the fat that's in there. And I cannot stress this enough, use more herbs and spices. What I have found, and there are exceptions, but what I have found in trying out a lot of recipes that I find online is that nobody is cooking with enough herbs and spices. We are relying on butter and salt and sugar to flavor our food, where we could really be cutting back on those things and adding flavor with our herbs and our spices. So here are some just flat out substitutions that you can try. A cup of butter, if a recipe calls for about a cup of butter or margarine or shortening or oil, cut that in half. Still use it, but cut it in half. So we're going to use a half cup of butter or fat, and then substitute the other half with your unsweetened applesauce or low-fat yogurt. This works particularly well in muffins and quick breads, like apple bread, banana bread, pumpkin bread. Works super well. The applesauce or the yogurt helps maintain the moisture and that soft crumble that you would get from the butter. You can also, instead of full fat dairy, use low fat or the fat-free equivalent. Guys, I do this all the time. I don't have whole milk in my fridge. I drink skim milk, non-fat milk. And I am not going to buy a carton of whole milk just to use a half a cup in a recipe. So anytime I make anything, if the recipe calls for milk and it always says whole milk, I always use non-fat milk. Turns out great. You're not going to miss the extra fat. When a recipe calls for cream, sometimes you can substitute half and half or evaporated skim milk. I have done this when I make cream soups, like a potato soup, because the cream is just adding that richness and you'll get the same thing from the half and half or the evaporated milk. I've also done this when I make quiche. If a quiche calls for cream, I can use half and half easily. This does not work when the cream is meant to be whipped so that it is creating a kind of a light, fluffy texture in your recipe, which we'll see later. At that point, you kind of still have to use the cream, because half and half in skim milk, they're not going to whip up like the heavy cream would. For all-purpose flour, a lot of times you can go half and half all-purpose flour, and whole wheat flour and still get great results. So let's talk about some actual food swaps. If you have done the holiday lunch and learn with me before in years past, you have seen these pictures. I am using them again because I like them so much. That first picture is stuffed cherry tomatoes. The recipe is on Taste of Home. The unmodified recipe is on Taste of Home. It calls for cucumber, green onion, dill. The dill is providing some flavors, that's your herb. And then it also uses cream cheese and mayonnaise. I would substitute Greek yogurt. And the first time I make it, I might use a combo of reduced fat cream cheese and the Greek yogurt, the non-fat Greek yogurt to substitute the mayonnaise. See how it turns out. And then maybe the next time I make it, I leave out the cream cheese and the mayonnaise and just use the Greek yogurt. Some of this is an experiment. You got to play with the recipe a couple of times to see what works. And that's okay. That's what's fun. I think it's fun. Also, the next picture is avocado feta dip. So instead of a full fat dip, let's do a healthier fat dip like the avocado, or a yogurt-based dip that is lower in fat. The avocado is still fat, still the same calories as your regular full fat dips. The difference is that it is heart healthy fat, and avocados are packed full of fiber. They're really, really good for you. So we're not reducing calories. You still can't eat the whole bowl, but we are making it a healthier dip. It's a Food Network recipe, and they suggest serving it with toasted baguettes, which you can see in the picture. I would suggest that avocado feta dip would be perfect with a veggie tray. Carrot sticks, celery, broccoli, cherry tomatoes, cauliflower will go great with that avocado and feta. Okay. Again, instead of chips and crackers, let's talk about fresh veggies. Instead of wine or cocktails, how about a little wine spritzer, half wine, half club soda, or a little glass of apple cider. Eggnog is eggnog. You can do some low-fat eggnog, or you can just shrink your portion and have a smaller serving of eggnog to manage your intake. Look, Starbucks holiday lattes, I love them. I'm not taking them away from anyone, but can we get a smaller size? Do you need the venti latte, or can we maybe look at the tall or even the grande? Can we do the non-fat milk? Maybe you can get it without the whipped cream. Those are all choices you can make to slim it down, but still enjoy it. Pumpkin pie, we're going to talk about this here. I can guarantee you that on Thanksgiving Day, I'm going to have a slice of my family's pumpkin pie. It's a family recipe. It's amazing. We only make it once a year. I'm going to have a slice. But we talked about the day versus the season, right? So if you really like pumpkin and you're jonesing for that pumpkin pie flavor before Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving, I'm going to give you a couple of different options. And here's the first one. On Chef Abby Gelman's website, you can see the link. I know you can't click on the link, but I put there so that you could jot it down if you're interested. Chef Abby Gelman on her website has a recipe for vegan pumpkin mousse, and she uses silken tofu in place of cream. So tofu comes in a lot of different textures. It can come extra firm, like chicken almost, all the way down to silken, which is more like a soft pudding consistency. Tofu has no flavor of its own, essentially. So it blends really well into recipes, and it takes on the flavor of what you're cooking it with. And so she uses the silken tofu to create that whipped, fluffy texture of mousse that we would normally get from adding cream. I have not tried it yet. I plan to test it out. This is a great recipe for anyone who is following a vegan diet or needs to just avoid dairy or cream. And for anyone just trying to lighten up and get rid of the cream for any reason, even if you're not vegan. And I just had a question if you can get copies of the slides. You absolutely can. You just have to send me an email and remind me that, that you need a copy. I think we can post the recording to our website. I'll have to check on the logistics of that. But yes, we can get you that info. All right, more healthy and tasty options. Again, if you have been with me on these talks before, you probably have seen that picture of the pasta salad before. That is one of mine that I've made. Pasta salad with lots of veggies and no heavy mayonnaise-based dressing can be a really great dish and a really healthy dish. I always take it to potlucks and parties because it's a huge success. I use tricolor orzo, the pasta orzo, some torn or chopped up raw spinach, some diced tomatoes, feta cheese, crumbled feta cheese. And then I usually, once it's all tossed together, very light olive oil, just a little splash of olive oil, and some white wine vinegar or a little lemon juice, some salt, pepper, oregano. Excuse me, there's your spice, your oregano, and it's delicious. Roasted nuts are a great snack, great healthy snack with a lot of protein. Fruit, I just had for a snack this morning, a cut up apple with a little bit of peanut butter and cinnamon on it. Some fruit crisps can replace pie and make it a little lighter with the same flavor. So that top picture is a Weight Watchers apple and cranberry crisp. And the topping is essentially oats with a small amount of brown sugar, small amount of butter, some cinnamon for that flavor. And it's a lot lighter. If you want to go even healthier, leave the skin on your apple before you cook it. So when you're cutting up your apple, don't peel it because you're getting all that fiber from the skin. It's going to soften as it cooks, just like the apples will. We talked about whole wheat flour instead of all-purpose flour. So that bottom picture is actually, that's from a recipe from Ellie Krieger. Ellie Krieger is a dietitian who is featured on Food Network all the time. She has cookbooks, and that is her whole wheat pancakes with strawberry sauce. So again, no syrup, no butter. I have found when I put a fruit puree or a fruit sauce on pancakes, that is all you need. You don't have to slather it with butter. That fruit is flavoring it perfectly. So let's get into some more recipes, some actual recipes for you guys. And those pictures, I tested these recipes, okay? So I wouldn't give you anything that I haven't tried myself. So sloppy turkey joes. For cancer prevention, we talk a lot about cutting back on red meat, red and processed meats. So not that you have to eliminate them completely, but really cutting back on the amount of red meat in your diet. So instead of regular sloppy joes with ground beef, let's use some lean ground turkey, okay? And yes, I can give you guys my email address for the handouts. Dana, did you want to answer that question live? Is that what I saw?
Sorry, I'm just trying to figure this out too.
I know
yes,
it.
I will do that.
Perfect.
I'll post it for everyone.
Dana's helping me out. She's going to post my email address. Guys, we're all figuring out Zoom together, okay? So sloppy turkey joe. I think sloppy joes are kind of like barbecue sauce. I don't make them a lot. I've only made them a few times. And I kind of think that there are tons of different recipes for sloppy joes, all with little variations, just like with barbecue sauce. So if you have a recipe that you really like, use it. I looked at a lot of different recipes for sloppy joes. So this is a combination of probably 3 or 4 different recipes. I took out the bits that I didn't like or that didn't make any sense, and I left in the bits that sounded good together. And so this is what I made. This is what I ended up with. So molasses, chili powder. I used canned diced tomatoes in their juices, but I made sure that that can was no salt added. No added, NaS is no added sodium, okay? Apple cider vinegar. You could also use white wine vinegar or red wine vinegar. I just thought the apple cider went better with all the other ingredients. Some ketchup, again, no added salt. Worcestershire sauce, orange juice. Put all that in a pan and you start cooking it down and stirring it until it gets thick. Meanwhile, here are your seasonings. Here's some more flavor. Onions, green pepper, and garlic sauteed. You add in your turkey and you cook all that up until there's no more pink in the turkey, right? And then you add the sauce into the turkey mixture. And if you need to cook it down a little bit more, if the sauce isn't quite as thick as you would like it, you can do that. You can also at that point add a little bit of salt and pepper if you need to help finish off the flavor, and a little pinch of cayenne, depending on how you like it, spicy or hot or whatever. Here's where you can also make substitutions. Here's where it's really flexible. I did not buy a green pepper because I already had a jar of pepperoncinis, the little green peppers in my fridge I had used for a different recipe, and I didn't want the pepperoncinis to go bad. So I did like 1/4 to 1/2 cup diced up of those and threw them in instead of the green pepper. Because they're already a little bit spicy and I don't eat super spicy food, I didn't add the cayenne afterwards, okay? But it's that easy. You can have them on whole wheat buns or maybe in whole wheat pita pockets, or we could ditch the bun and add some whole grains and extra veggies. Maybe instead of eating it as a sandwich, you serve it on top of some wild rice and roasted vegetables. Or when you're cooking it, maybe you add some shredded or diced up carrots in with the onions and the green pepper and the garlic to saute with the turkey. And now you've increased the vegetables in the sloppy joe if you want to have sandwiches. So there are lots of options. There's a lot of flexibility. Mashed potatoes and cauliflower. I wanted to lighten up mashed potatoes. I still wanted mashed potatoes, which is why I did not do full mashed cauliflower, but I wanted to lighten them up. So again, this is a combination of a lot of different recipes, but essentially I ended up with 2 pounds of potatoes. I prefer Yukon Gold potatoes. I think they have a nice flavor. And a 10-ounce bag of frozen cauliflower rice. You can certainly buy, a head of cauliflower and chop it up and boil it with the potatoes. The cauliflower will be done quicker, probably about 15 minutes compared to the 25 with the potatoes. Or you can microwave that frozen bag of cauliflower rice. I put the potatoes and the rice all together once they were cooked to mash them. I had a hard time getting the cauliflower rice smooth. So I think the next time I do it, I will probably put the cauliflower in a food processor or a blender by itself to puree it after it is cooked to get it nice and smooth, and then add it to the potatoes. I ultimately used a 1/4 cup of butter, which is 4 tablespoons, and just about a 1/2 cup of skim milk. I think that was too much. Start with 2 tablespoons of butter and a 1/4 cup of milk, a little salt and pepper to taste, and some roasted garlic. Here's some more of that flavor so that you don't have to add so much of the other stuff. Take a head of garlic, cut the top off, drizzle it with olive oil, wrap it in aluminum foil, and roast it in a 400-degree oven for about 40 minutes. Let it cool, and then it's so soft that you'll be able to squeeze the garlic out of the skins. It's like a soft paste. Put all that garlic in your potato cauliflower mixture and mash everything up together. That roasted garlic, you will not regret it. And then you can probably use a little bit less butter, and the milk is up to you depending on how light and fluffy or how creamy you want your mashed potatoes. Okay. And it really did lighten them up, and it added a little extra vegetable serving in there from the cauliflower. Green bean casserole. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I hate green bean casserole because I don't like that condensed cream of mushroom soup. So in my family, we've always just had green beans, like steamed green beans with almonds. But if you're still looking for the flavor of a green bean casserole, how about we saute some green beans, some sliced up shallots. I like shallots for the flavor versus like a white or a yellow onion. Some mushrooms, just saute all that for about 5 minutes, get it nice and soft, um, with a little bit of olive oil, salt and pepper, a little bit of salt and pepper. You could also use some garlic, or we've already got the shallots in there, so you don't have to add any more onion powder. Maybe a little basil and oregano. And then at the end, when it's all cooked, throw in some toasted almonds, like some slivered almonds or sliced almonds that you toasted. Top the green bean mixture with that. That's going to give you the crunch that you're missing from the fried onions. And then you've got all the flavors of a green bean casserole, but it's so fresh and it's lightened up. If you really need the casserole, you really need that sauce, the link that I'm showing is a blog called Gimme Some Oven. They have a lighter, healthier green bean casserole. It's a little bit more work. It's a little bit more involved. You are making your own sauce, but it's lightened up and it just looks so much more inviting than a regular green bean casserole. I have shared this recipe before. My family cooks, we make it every year for Thanksgiving. It's one of our favorites. There are no candied yams with marshmallows at my house. I just think it's overly sweet and it's kind of weird. So this sweet potato casserole is basically mashed sweet potatoes with a light streusel topping. And the streusel is chopped up pecans, cinnamon, a little bit of brown sugar, a little bit of butter. And here's what I did to change. So the recipe was already lighter than candied yams. I took that streusel topping, cut the brown sugar down from 2/3 of a cup to only 1/4 of a cup, and the butter from 3 tablespoons down to 1 tablespoon. That's all it needs, and it's delicious. It is called bourbon sweet potato casserole with streusel topping. I've made it both ways. My family has made it with the alcohol and without. It is completely delicious without. It's only like 2 tablespoons. You don't miss it if you leave it out. Okay. And here's the other version of pumpkin mousse. So if you don't need it to be vegan, if you don't want to use the tofu, we are still going to use cream in this recipe because we need it whipped so that it's nice and light and fluffy. So this is the original recipe is from another food blog called Bare Feet in the Kitchen. I took that recipe, I eliminated the 2 egg yolks that were in it because this recipe does not get cooked, basically. The egg yolks would not have been cooked. And I'm not really a fan of raw eggs in my products. So I just took them out. I didn't substitute anything, I just eliminated them. It also calls for dark rum to mix with the gelatin. I wanted it alcohol free, again, since we weren't cooking it. So I used 1/4 cup of skim milk for the gelatin instead. And then for the sugar, the original recipe was a cup of regular granulated sugar. Cut it in half, a 1/2 cup, and I switched it to brown sugar because for this pumpkin recipe with all these warm spices, I felt like the brown sugar would add a little bit more flavor. And then for the spices, I doubled the allspice. It was an eighth of a teaspoon. I made it 1/4 of a teaspoon, and I doubled the cinnamon from 1 teaspoon to 2 teaspoons, okay, to give it some more flavor. And then the whipping cream, the original recipe called for 2 cups of whipping cream. I cut it in half, 1 cup, and I whipped it in the mixer and folded it in to all the other ingredients that you mix together. And I still had a beautiful, fluffy, delicious pumpkin mousse, 8 1/2 cup servings that I put in those cute little martini glasses. And you can serve it as is, just as the mousse, which you see in the first picture, Or if you're really missing that crust flavor, you can do some crumbled graham crackers at the bottom of the glass. Or what I did was just crumble up a ginger snap cookie and put it on the top as a little garnish. Okay. It was delicious. It gave me the flavor of pumpkin pie, and it was about half the calories, half the fat and half the calories. It is also important to remember that food is not everything when we're dealing with the holiday season. Don't forget to move. Don't forget to be active. Go for a walk after dinner. Take your kids, take your family. Maintain your exercise routine. The recommendation for a healthy lifestyle is 30 minutes a day of moderate intensity most days of the week. If you don't have 30 minutes all at once, do you have 15 minutes twice a day that you could break it up? Okay, so that you can maintain some physical activity, because we want to enjoy the holiday season without regrets, right? We want to be able to eat what we like, enjoy it, not go crazy, and not have any regrets. So I've had a couple of questions as we've went. I also saw that there were a couple people using the chat box. I know that it's just about 12:30. It's a little over 12:30. If you have time, I have a couple minutes. I will be happy to answer some more questions in that Q&A box. Somebody asked if we can substitute avocado oil for vegetable oil in a recipe. And yes, you can. It would be the same measurement. It might change the flavor, right? So if you use vegetable oil or canola oil, it's not a strong flavor. It kind of blends in. If you use avocado oil, walnut oil, you might, depending on how much oil is in the recipe, you might be changing the flavor a little bit. That's the only thing. Somebody else said that they use that trick and it's amazing, fantastic. Oh, this must be talking about the vegan pumpkin mousse. Somebody else is vegan and has done this. Oh, for the vegetable oil. So any other questions that I can answer? It looks like some of you are already using these substitutions with really great results, and I love it. I think Dana has provided. Dana, did you post my email address? Do I need to give it at this point?
No, I posted your email address for the handouts and also a reminder that I will upload the recording to SharePoint.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. I am not seeing any other questions, and we are past 12:30, but thank you all for staying with me. And I look forward to the next one in January. And I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you, April.